Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of Happy Maybe, a podcast where we discuss various ways to find happiness in this difficult, winding labyrinth of life.
Indeed. Hi, Vasily.
Hello, Nikita.
So,
What is going on?
so I was thinking that one way to discuss anything at all is to discuss the opposite of it. And that kind of brings us to what's the opposite of happiness, which is a whole nother conversation. But it's definitely there is something that's not happiness, and it's anger. So one of many stories that happened to me and my personal relationship to anger. I was in a cab, I was in a taxi with two people, my friend and another girl. And we were, coming back from a party pretty late. I didn't know this other girl quite well. And that was in New York City. And the cab took a little bit of an unexpected route. And the girl was very upset. So she started being verbally abusive towards the driver. She started visibly being angry, and I was in the front wheel. Yes.
Were you sharing it with a stranger, the ride, or you were coming back from the party together? Already met, right?
No, the three of us met before. Yeah, so we knew each other, but we did know each other well. And again, the thing that happened is the driver took an unexpected route and maybe took a couple of wrong turns. And this girl that I didn't know well became visibly angry, verbally abusive, and otherwise behaving kind of strangely. And in that moment, it doesn't really matter exactly what was happening and who said what and etc. But what was interesting to me is I was in the presence of a person who was kind of disturbed and angry and probably unhappy in the moment. And what's more important, this person was angry towards somebody who I don't think deserved to receive all this anger. The driver was didn't know what to do. He tried to explain what's happening and he tried to reason with her, and that didn't work. And so I will tell you more about this, but I guess have you been in a situation when you were next to someone who is angry towards somebody else, and how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I thought about another similar situation where one time an airplane broke down, Air India. I was flying from Bangkok to New Delhi to then take another plane to New York. Then the plane broke down. Apparently engine caught fire, so we had an emergency landing in Calcutta. So yeah, the story is interesting from the start. Right? So anyway, I'll skip all the parts leading us to the hotel where we had to check in and spend the night. Turned out there was not enough room in that hotel for all of us, and the airline was obligated to accommodate us. Plus, most of us needed a visa to enter India if we wanted to get another hotel. So we were all kind of cool, except for one young woman. She said, "I'm not sharing a room with anybody. You give me a room." She was so angry, she said, "Give me a room right now. I'm not sharing. Because that was the only way to go. We had to share beds. There was, let's say, it was 50 of us. There was only 25 rooms. And she got it because she was angry. And I was not angry, and I, made an agreement with somebody that we would just make a divider, with pillows and basically we were okay. But I thought her anger got her somewhere, but I was very uncomfortable. It usually makes me uncomfortable. It usually makes me feel like, is it needed? Is it justified? Is it coming out in the right way? Maybe there's a better way for the anger to come out. Clearly, anger is an integral part of our human sort of spectrum of emotions. So yeah, basically it's discomfort and what's the other word? It's embarrassment, on behalf of the other person, for them losing their face in front of people. That's what I feel.
Yeah,
How about you?
This is interesting. So what you're describing is when you witness someone become angry, you see this as something embarrassing, right? As something that isn't necessary. And I kind of agree with you. From a young age, I had this idea that if I have an argument with anybody, the moment the person loses their cool, the moment that they raise the voice or start using any particular language, I consider this argument over. I consider that I won. The moment the other person becomes emotional. And so my way of handling conflicts has always been, I'm going to just reason with the person until they get very angry at me. And honestly, it is not the best way to handle conflicts. So back to my story, right? The three of us are in the car. We're about 20 minutes to our destination. the girl is in the back seat, my friend is in the back seat, and I'm in the front seat. And I'm in the front seat, and then the girl is being super just unreasonable. And I honestly didn't know what to do. I wasn't quite sure. So I tried asking her. I was asking her, what's going on? Why are you so upset? Everything is fine. We're on the route to the destination. We're going to be home in 20 minutes. Nothing is happening. It's all fine. And then she would say, no, it's not fine because the driver took a wrong turn and the driver is taking the wrong route and it's inefficient and it's whatever. Completely unreasonable. So the voice of reason was not working. The voice of trying to listen to her emotions for me, which is my other way of doing, it also wasn't working. And I honestly didn't know what to do. And the more in fact, I felt the desire to talk to her more and kind of make her even more angry. That honestly wasn't working until my friend, who was also in the back seat, she said, to her that the way she spoke with the driver is unacceptable and that, she would prefer if we didn't talk for the rest of the ride. And that was a very confrontational way of being, right? She pretty much said, let's not talk. I don't want to hear any more of you. And that would be my preference. And that was a very strong and very confrontational way of being. To my surprise, it actually worked. I was genuinely scared that there was going to be an entire fight in the backseat, but everybody just shut up for the rest of the ride, which was very awkward. And I really wanted to continue having this passive-aggressive argument with this person. Once again, just want to make sure, because this is something I'm saying publicly. I'm not giving out any names, who these people were. And I honestly, personally do not have any judgment towards it. I'm only using this story as a case study of how I personally relate to anger. So go ahead.
Well, let me tell you what usually happens when I try to find examples of anger. Like if you ask me, like, when was the last time you were angry? This kind of type of thing. I generally think that I don't tend to acknowledge that I get angry. Surely I get angry, but I kind of hide it from myself. And I label it as something rather, like irritation, something lighter than anger, frustration, maybe being upset or being, down in emotional spiral or something like that. But the anger to me is just so outwardly expressed. It's like very high energy, negative energy, a lot of messy sort of energy. So I can't deal with it. I think my protection, sort of my defense mechanism from anger is to just ignore it and not acknowledge it, even though it happens. Like, do you know when you're angry?
It's changed over time, I think. However, in the last couple of years, when I was becoming angry and I was looking for ways to express it, it looked very strange. I'm able to see when I'm angry very, very clearly. I'm usually surprised to discover that I'm angry. And my main emotion in the moment when I am angry is to protect other people from that anger. There's a very strong internal controller, I guess, that is activated to protect other people from anger. I remember I was having a conversation with someone and the conversation wasn't going anywhere. Again and again, it was going in circles. And as it was going in circles, I was getting more and more worked up to the point where I would have visual flashes in my head of me screaming. I would have the experience that, okay, I gotta scream right now, but I don't. And then I would tell the other person, I would say, hey, I am very angry and you might, in the next 5 minutes, if we continue like this, you will hear me scream. Please know that I'm not screaming at you. I would actually scream in the opposite direction. And I'm only doing it because this is an emotion express. There was a lot of a preparation to even express any sort of anger of this kind. Or
very padded. Buffered.
It's an entire buffer to save everybody from that anger. I'm genuinely afraid of it, and I'm afraid of it affecting people. And there's many other examples like this. And what I'm realizing is that I think anger is useful. I want to believe that every emotion that exists is there for a reason. And the question that I have for myself right now is, I wonder if sometimes anger in response to anger is a necessary and useful response.
I mean, if every emotion has its place and has its role, then just automatically, yes, of course, anger has its useful side. But is it like anger in terms of protecting people you love or protecting people of your village when an enemy enters and you're angry at the enemy, then you can be aggressive, to the 100th degree to destroy whoever invades? Maybe then anger is completely justified. When it's anger at close people, I think it's very destructive and can can damage a lot of relationships beyond repair. So I don't know, I become very rational when it comes to admitting anger, and I become very scared when I'm around people who are unhinged, who don't control anger. And some people, it's the only way for them to let it out. They get angry momentarily, it gets out, they're done. So much better than harboring it inside. But for me, witnessing those moments is very scary.
I'm definitely noticing that I was about to say I'm uncomfortable, but I'm realizing that I don't know what it means anymore. I don't enjoy and I don't know what to do when I'm in presence of someone who is angry, whether this anger is justified or not. And my typical reaction is to try to reason with them, saying that anger is completely unnecessary. And in fact, let's say that someone was let's say we have three people in total. One person gets angry, the other person gets offended or hurt in some way by person A, and this person B later will be angry at person A. And to me, these two people are not different, because it is anger that sort of traveled from person A onto the person B. And then I'm realizing that as I'm listening to this anger, I become, annoyed / angry at the person for being angry. So I'm part of the problem now.
But in a way, the only rational way out of it is to have your defenses up and not let that anger penetrate you, at least beyond the moment of it being expressed. Not let it linger with you. So I think that's what I go for. Basically, witness it, remember it as a story, and just not carry it with me. To be happy, because I think being angry automatically makes someone unhappy, especially if it's anger that is just constantly generating, inside of you. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a conversation one time on this podcast and got angry at each other, at least one of us? It would be very entertaining for the listener if we allowed it to be kept. You want to put a nice bow on it?
I think we're too much alike that we don't allow a lot of anger to be expressed. And so we had an episode where we had a slight disagreement, and I felt a hint, like a little bit of a tiny amount of annoyance, and then we had an entire conversation about it later. And even that tiny amount of annoyance actually was, for me, scary, I guess. I'm remembering this once that I went to Arizona for some odd spiritual retreat in Sedona, because of course Sedona, and I forgot the name of it. It doesn't matter, but it was this retreat space built by some Korean, of all places, some Korean guru. And pretty much 3 days in a row, people were screaming and yelling and crying and running and getting uncomfortable, getting their emotions through. And there was this one exercise on day 2, I think, where they had us move enough so that we have enough energy. And then at one point they would do like a guided meditation when they would talk about your parents and your relationship with your parents. And I remember how, to my surprise, they were talking about fathers and how you feel towards your father. To my surprise, I discovered some anger, which again is not unusual. We all have some sort of relationship with our parents. But what surprised me is not the anger itself. That seems kind of boring. The relationship to this anger in me, what was surprising. I felt so much anger, in fact, that I was afraid to express it in any way possible, and I didn't know anything else to do. So I remember sitting there on the chair, pretty much clenching my fists and being in this like very tense posture, because in my head I wanted to throw this chair in the window, and I was sitting there stopping myself from throwing chairs in windows, especially because there were a lot of women in the space, and I especially didn't want to do any of that. And I remember on the way back, driving back to the airport to go home, I remember thinking how in the normal social, typical modern life, there are very few, if any, healthy ways to express anger. And I mean anger as emotional, like aggression as emotion. There are very few ways of doing this. I can think of very, very few ways of doing this. And even if I wanted to like scream real loud as I'm angry, there are no places for me to do it. I found one. You can be very loud in your car because nobody can hear you. You're in traffic, and I've done it, and it is wonderful. You just drive and you scream real loud until you don't have any of it left, and that's so good and therapeutic.
Right here, like if anyone's listening and they want to make a new business that didn't exist before, punching bags, screaming rooms, all kinds of things.
I'm glad you're talking about this. That was exactly my thought. Just exactly when I was returning back to New York, realizing there is not a place for me to express my anger. And I thought, wouldn't that be great if there existed some sort of business that I can pay and go in and just like express my anger? Guess what? It's called a break room. I'm sure you've heard of those. In New York, there is a couple.
Really? Just for that?
Yeah, it's a place. Yeah, it's a place where you go and then you pay for some cheap glasses or cheap broken electronics, and they allow you to throw it at the wall, or they let you in to a room where everything is set up. They give you a baseball bat to smash the shit out of it.
Holy crap.
So those things exist. Still, it's a little bit not the same, but the fact that this exists is super interesting to me.
Oh, I love it. I want to go one time just to experience it, to see if it's for me. But it sounds great. Yes. I mean, surely there's repressed anger in me, in probably many of us, that we don't even address. But once you start it, there's probably some retreats where people are trained to yell on top of their lungs and, just express themselves. And it feels uncomfortable at first, but liberating later. But how many situations, environments exist in our daily lives where you can actually freely do that and are encouraged to do that? So yeah, break room. It sounds awesome. Cool. All right. Well, let's do this when we can. Actually, I'm going to be in New York, not alone from today. So maybe I'll seek a visit to that type of place.
Yeah. So the story that we have today is there is a separate thing to anger, that is the relationship with one's anger. And there is not a lot of ways we can express anger, at least known to us in the modern society. And that is the question. If you're not happy, then one of the ways to be might be that you're angry. And if you're angry, and maybe you're one of the people who think that anger is, justified and absolutely necessary and useful, it is definitely on the other side of the spectrum from being happy. And that's where we are.
Agreed.
Let's wrap it up.
Good talking to you. Until the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasily.